What's up, everybody? I promised it to you, so here it is, Dream Puppets 60 of my own design. Oh my god, I love that curve. Just looking at it gets me all hot and bothered. First off, though, I do want to say welcome to all the new people that we have hanging out in the comments, hanging out in the sub column. It's awesome to have you guys aboard. It's just so much fun. Doing this is really just a lot of fun for me. It's just really cool, and the best part about it is definitely connecting with the community. The Duels of the Planeswalkers community is probably one of the strongest, most outspoken, and coolest communities to be a part of. So it's awesome to be making videos for you guys, and to have you coming on here and commenting and just being a part of it is awesome. So thanks a lot to WMG as well for giving that video of mine a shout out. That was really cool of you guys to go ahead and link to it and everything, so I really appreciate that. Not to gush or anything, but I am a huge fan of their channel. I was doing just Let's Plays of NES games and stuff, and seeing their videos really made me kind of get into doing these specific Magic videos. So it's really cool to have somebody like them hanging out and helping out the channel. So thanks again, you guys, and thanks to all the new people here, but enough about all that bullshit. Let's get into the 60. I actually like this a lot. You guys, if you've been here a while, know that blue is my least favorite color to play. I am not a fan by any means. But I do love doing stuff on my opponent's turn. I love being tricky and things, and this deck really lends itself to that quite a bit. I've changed up the build significantly from what my original build was. We've also got a build out there from one of the subs, which I could be running here in the near future for just a couple games, just kind of see how that feels, see how that runs, and we'll throw that in the description of that video when that time comes, and of course give him credit. So that's awesome. If you guys want to send in builds, I'm always interested to see what you guys are running as alternatives to what I've got. But just getting into this deck right now, we're going to talk about what's downstairs first. So what's heading into battle every goddamn time is going to be Mr. Krabs over here. This card is insane. I love him. I love him quite a bit. Look at his little goofy face on there. Goofball. He's going to mill some cards, which is always fun. Wait until you have a land to play him, because you'll be like, play, land, what's up? He's good. We run both of them. Jace's Orgasm is pretty good as well. It's a 5/5. Sometimes it's a 1/1. You never know. He's a mysterious guy. He is a 1-drop, though, and he's pretty strong. He's what gives your deck feet. Without this card in here, you can go a strict mill style for this deck, and you don't really need this guy. But in my experience, I like having multiple win cons, and having this guy in here really lends itself to, 40% creatures I like, because this really lends itself to getting in there and just damaging your opponent. And going that route as well is still having some pretty fun ways to mill, as we were talking about. Thought Scour is a great way to start talking about the mill, because target player is only going to do 2 cards, but it's an instant and you get to draw a card, and that's my favorite thing about this. You're going to notice something in this build. Pretty much if it says draw a card, I'm running it. If it does something and lets me draw a card, I run it, because Cantrips is just insane, dude. You just keep drawing cards. The fact that I can tap down a dude or bounce a dude or do something like that and still have 6 cards in hand afterwards, still have the same amount of cards that I did before in hand afterwards, is insane. You always want to stay gripped up with this deck, so this is definitely in there. Tome Scour is very powerful because it's 5 cards for 1 mana. Sorcery speed, but that is perfectly alright with me. That early in the game, they're not going to be able to stop it generally. Unsummon is Unsummon. It's in every blue deck pretty much, and it will stay in this one. It's just a good solid card. If they go to pump out somebody and slap you in the mouth, you unsummon it in response, and they wasted an entire turn. You can also unsummon things after they've played something. If they all first main something badly, then you can unsummon one of their attackers. They won't have enough mana to play it again afterwards. Unsummon is just a really utility card at instant speed for 1. Counterspell is Counterspell. I shouldn't have to tell you why that is good, so they're both in there. End of the roll, like I was saying, is sickeningly good because you get to draw a card. Sometimes you don't. Don't be afraid to drop this card without the kicker cost. We've talked about it before, but just because it says kicker does not mean that its CMC is 4. You can cast it for 2 and bounce a dude if it's going to save your ass. So both of those are in there. I generally like to wait until I have the 4 mana open because I have other ways to bounce stuff before then. Then we have Mind Sculpt, the sorcery speed as well. All 3 of these are in the deck because it is 7 cards for 2 mana. Not as great of a value as our previous card, Tome Scour, but it is still very good, and it's going to let you get Jace's Orgasm nice and big and sticky for everyone involved. This guy bounces things, which is fun, so yeah, that's in there. If it had Flash, it would be maybe the best card ever. I would have like pictures of it on my ceiling next to my mirror, and it would just be a good time for everybody. I run both of them because I like bouncing things. Crippling Chill draws me a card, and it is like, it's like 2-turn removal. It's like kind of saying, hey, I see what you're doing there. You're going to do that 2 turns from now, because obviously you do it on their turn first main before attack step. Like, it sucks that you have to do it first main, because this game is a little sketchy about moving into combat. Like in real life, you'd be like, hey, asshole, at the beginning of the match. You'd be like, hey, asshole, we need to announce everything, because I'm playing blue. So you need to be like, first main, play land, second, and then just be like, move to attack step, and you're like, boom, Crippling Chill. So in real Magic, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit easier to play, but you do kind of have to just wait. And the second combat lights up, you can go ahead and Crip Chill, something like that. It's pretty nice. You ice somebody down. It's a good time. Draw a card. Moving on to Dream Fracture. I love this because it says draw a card. I have so many counter spells and so many ways to deal with things that I don't really care that they get a card. Like, anytime my opponent gets a card, that makes me sad. Like, I don't like that. I do not like giving my opponent the opportunity to slap me in the mouth. But this is different because it stops them from playing something. Like, Dream Fracture, you just have to know when to play it. And don't forget the fact that they could draw, like, land or something big that they won't get the opportunity to play. This is just a solid card. Don't let your opponent drawing a card frighten you off of playing a freaking counterspell. Clone is in here because it clones things. I mean, this way you can, what? You can do, you can play maybe this guy that we'll talk about in a minute, and then just drop Clone down and be like, hey, guess what? I've got 2 of your dude out of your discard pile. There's a lot of different fun things that Clone's for. Now, when I was unlocking, I played around with not having Clone in, but he's just too good. He's a pretty awesome utility card for 4 mana, so definitely have him in there as well. Sleep is fantastic. Sometimes it buys you the turn that you need to get to that win. It's going to tap down your entire opponent's side. I mean, it doesn't do it. If it was an instant speed card, that would be so good, but Sleep is still going to buy you 1 turn. It's the closest thing to board wipe that you're going to get in this deck, so definitely worth playing. Archive Trap is hilarious. Read it. Read it. Opponent, search his life. Wait a minute. Oh my god, all the sack lands? Yes, everybody, the sack lands, any kind of tutor, like freaking just random ass cards. There's like 1 random card in almost every deck that is going to allow you to activate this son of a bitch for 0. Not to mention the fact that even if you can't, it's 5 mana for 13 cards, which is just amazing. We got Body Double in here, both of them, because it is awesome to just be like, hey, I'm gonna mill half your pile, then I'm gonna grab one of your dudes and kill you with it. Body Double's sickening. Like, it is the other half of the feat for this deck that is gonna allow you to actually do direct damage to your opponent and win via that win con instead of just having to mill them. Body Double goes a long way to making this an aggressive deck. And then I actually run both Chancellor of the Spires because I'm insane and I like playing cards out of my opponent's graveyard. Is this card good? Not really. I could talk all day about all the reasons why I don't really want to run this card. We skipped Traumatize because my, I think it glitched a little bit, or I don't know, I'm just losing it. Traumatize is awesome, top half their library, rounded down into their graveyard. It's almost always better than Archive Trap, but sometimes you have to do the math. I mean, it's always good though. Like, even if there are 20 cards, it's 10 cards for 5 mana, which isn't that terrible. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty good. But let's get back to Chancellor Spires. Basically, I'm a crazy person, and I just think this card is silly. Like, plus you can Body Double it because it's not legendary. Then you can do crazy things like, I don't know, like if it's in your yard, like you can Body Double it and clone it, which is what I meant to say. You can clone it, so you have like 2 of them. It's a good solid time, you know what I mean? Like, plus that instant or sorcery card doesn't get exiled, so when you clone it, you can play the same one. I mean, this can be a board wipe for you, it can be bribery, it can be all sorts of crazy things that would just be really awesome. Generally, in my opponent's deck, there are cards I want to play. Now, you can talk all day about bad things about this card, the fact it costs 7, the fact that sometimes you're playing against a deck where you literally don't want to play anything out of their yard. It does say Maze, so you don't have to, but that really sucks because basically you're tapping down to play a 7-mana 5/7, which is really, really weak. So the argument could be made for running one of these. The argument could be made for running none of these like I do in my other pile, but I just like having bombs that actually can matter. This deck does not have great cards, and that's not a reason to make you play cards that are subpar. Like, you still want to play the best cards you can, but I think this card is in that category. I mean, it's going to do work for you more often than not. Seeing it in action is really going to make a big difference in this argument, because of course it does sort of double as 2 spells as well, because it is a Thought Scour if it's in your opening hand. Only if it's in your opening hand. It functions as a Thought Scour, and then later on it is a 7-mana copy a card in your opponent's graveyard. You can also get like Time Warp and stuff, which would be really fun. Let's pop upstairs to see who is staying home this week. We got Grindstone, which is sometimes bad, which means that I don't play it. The thing with this deck is that there are a lot of cards in here that are sometimes bad. And if they're sometimes bad, then that means that sometimes it's going to lose me the game. And I am not going to waste my time putting a card that might lose me the game in my 60. So that's out. The art is amazing, though. Just super awesome. I'd try saying that guy's name, but that would be a bad time for all of us. But that art, super sick. Each player draws X cards. Hey, guess what I don't like doing? Giving my opponent plays. Visions of Beyond, like, this barely matters. Most of the time, it's just replacing itself. I don't know. It's not good enough of the time to get in my pile. Grind Clock, it's slow. It's just too slow, to be honest with you. This is the stall pile, so if you can get it out on turn 2, it could be good, but if you're top decking at the end of the game, it's going to lose you the game. Like, it just doesn't do anything. It's not like Sands of Delirium, which even at like your very last turn, like if you're about to die, if you top deck Sands of Delirium, there's a possibility that you can win off that. So that's out. Howling Mind's out because it gives my opponent cards first. What? Like, I have to play it. They get 2 cards, and then I get any kind of, like, I know we're trying to mill them, but I'm not trying to put the cards into their hand. I'm trying to put them into the yard. So Howling Mind's out. Jace's Erasure. I do draw a lot of cards in this one, but there's just, like, this is out for some creatures that I have. You know what I mean? Like, Jace's Erasure is good if you drop it turn 2, and it's powerful because it stacks up, you know, like, over the course of the game, this is going to add up, but there's just not room at the table for him in this build. Now, you could make the argument to take out Chancellor of the Spires and put Jace's Erasure then in, but in that instance, I would argue that you have a really clogged early pool. I mean, looking up at the curve for this one, the 13-7-6, a lot of those cards overlap, and you want to spend turn 3 playing like a 2 and a 1 or something like that. Like, Erasure is going to kind of slow down your tempo a little bit, and it just doesn't have the same pressure or the same board changing capabilities as Chancellor does. So I do leave him up. I don't need mana ramp in this deck because I don't really have too many cards that cost a lot, and the fact that I'm drawing so much means that I'm going to get to those lands a little bit quicker. Sands of Delirium is up here. Like I was saying earlier, this is a card that if you top deck it could win, but unfortunately a lot of the time, and you know, when I was unlocking the deck I was singing its praises because it is a good card because your extra mana can get funneled into it. But the fact of the matter is that this deck doesn't have any like mass evacuation or anything that's going to severely hamper your opponent to the point where you can really spend the time using Sands of Delirium. Sure, sometimes it's going to win for you, and the art, again, is super sick. Blue's got some great art, but unfortunately, a lot of the time, you're going to be clogging, like I was saying earlier, you're going to clog your early drops, you're going to clog your turn 1, 2, 3, 4, because 4 is really when you drop Sands, because that's when things tend to taper off on this deck, and you can do stuff like that. But it's just not good enough to take up a slot. It's just a little too slow. Stroke of Genius, I draw cards, but it's like 3. So what am I doing? For like 5 mana, I get 2? Are you serious? Like, the math just not work out on this card. Plus, that looks nothing like Urza, right? Is that supposed to be Urza? That looks nothing like Urza. That's like a Chinese guy. Like, no, I mean, no offense, but like, all the other pictures of Urza don't really look anything like that guy. I don't know. That's early years Urza, though. You know, he's just building Karn and having a good time. Sword of Body and Mind is a great card if we had a little bit more than 40% creatures in here. Not to mention the fact that it's 5 mana. It's going to take me like 2 turns. when I go to equip it to something, they're just going to kill it or bounce it or do something. Like, this card leads to too many open turns for me. This deck wins just fine without it. Sure, that's a card that's great, but basically when I play Sword of Body and Mind, it's kind of a card that I'm playing when I'm already ahead that just makes me win more quickly. Sure, in some cases it's going to give your dude pro blue, pro green, which is super important to realize in this current environment, like in the format that we're playing right now. But I don't know, like, too often it's just going to clog up your turns. Not to mention the fact that they can, like, disperse this thing and then block your dude and just make you super sad. Like, I don't know. There's just too many times where this leaves me open to an assault from my opponent. Now we're going to talk about one of my favorite freaking cards. I'm really sad saying here. Look at that long eyelashed freaking octopus. Just looking at some water bubbles. I love this card because it draws me cards. Like, if I have too many lands, I'm like, tap, draw some cards. What do I got? Options? That sounds great. Discard 2 lands. But in all honesty, when you're playing this turn 4 in online matches, your opponent has just got you outgunned, and the 2/2 body's not going to be good enough for you. Not to mention the fact that he has to wake up in order to activate his ability since it's a tap ability. So it's just, I don't know. Like, it's a little too slow. It's a little too weak for me. This card people will argue with me over. I just don't like getting rid of my own hand. Like, I win just fine without this card in there, and I think I win sometimes because this card isn't in there. Like, the fact that I melee myself, it's not the fact that I'm worried about getting to 0 cards, it's the fact that I'm losing advantage. Like, every card that hits the yard is a card that I could have aimed at my opponent's face. And personally, it accelerates your win if you're going for the mill outlet, but it doesn't necessarily win for you. Not to mention the fact that this thing is dead no matter what. Like, it is always dead, and it is killed on your first main after it's milled you. So it's just, no. I mean, in the current format, the way it is, like, almost every deck has a way to kill this thing after it mills me. And even if they don't, like, it's a 2/2, it's just not strong enough to be in this deck. It doesn't lend itself to the attack outlet, and I don't think it's necessary for the mill. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. Fallen. Oh, why don't I just give my opponent more outs? No, I'm going to go ahead and pass on that. Unsummon is a fun card because it does things like tap creatures and artifacts and what have you. It's just a little too slow for me. It's turn 4. It's, I got rid of that for, you know, that earlier curve. I love that curve. That's pretty amazing to me. But I did get rid of it for some earlier plays so I could make a little bit more room. This guy I've always hated. I just don't like him. Like, mill 2, I don't care. He's a 1/4, bullshit 4, whatever. Why am I giving my opponent 7 cards? I'm not. Mind control gets broken like way too much. Like, people just bust all over mind control. If I'm not running Telmim, I'm not going to run mind control, and I'm not running Telmim. You can see it down there. But I don't know. Like, mind control is kind of good because it's better than clone in the fact that it gets rid of the threat on your opponent's side of the field, but it's worse than clone because it can't, like, double your own guy. So I don't know. Mind control could actually be in for Chancellor because it is kind of bomby. Like, you get to grab, like, Grave Titan or something. That'd be good. Inferno Titan, that'd be great, especially since that deck can't really kill Inferno Titan because it's a 6 in the ass. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this, but then there's a lot of stuff that's going to make you sad about it, too. Like, I mean, this guy gets those dudes, too, for 5 mana. But he's, like, your own dude. You can even bounce this guy, get him back, put him down as something else. And it's not like Rise from Grave, so if they can bounce the card or something somehow back into their hand or something like that, like, it doesn't grab it out of the yard and put it on your side of the field. They can't get it back. Like, if you have to bounce it, which you wouldn't if that was the case, that's the worst description ever. But I think you guys are following what I'm saying. Like, this guy is just better, I think, than Mind Control in most instances, so that's where I went with that. This guy has to hit in order to be good. He's never going to. Like, he might. He might. Top 4 is pretty good. I think he's hit me once the entire time I've been playing the game, though, so not good enough. Sturmgeist! This guy is just terrorizing that village. He's just having a bad old time of it down there. He's got some weird face issues on the right there. A little strange. Anyway, I don't know. I don't really like this guy. He's a star. Sometimes he's like a 1/1 for 5. I don't like that. He's got to hit my opponent in order to be, like, relevant at all, so I don't like that. He's out. Telmim's too unpredictable. It's awesome. Look, is he doing card art? God, he's so good. Or she. I'm not really sure. But the card art's awesome. It's just too unpredictable. I mean, it's fun because they can't bust it after it happens because it's a sorcery, so you just gain control of it, and then they have to figure out a way to take care of it. But then they could bounce it back into their hand and stuff as well. Some decks, you are going to mill them out like 20 cards before they hit a creature. Like 5 color, this is just hilarious because you mill most of their cards and then you are guaranteed to get something good, like Double Dragon or something like that. The worst you could get is like that spider that cycles. But yeah, I mean, Telemon's just up here because it's bad too much of the time. It just leaves me overexposed because I just tap down 5 mana. I did it on turn 5, tap down 5 mana, and now I have no responses that I can do. A lot of my stuff's instant speed. I want time to prepare for that. Traumatize, one of them's out because I only need 1 in here to hit. I mean, I guess you could put in the second one for one of these Chancellors. I don't know why you would, though, because Chancellor's fun. Forced Fruition, I mean, let's think about this for a second. Okay, let's think about this. If my opponent gets to cast 2 spells and I have Forced Fruition out, like if that Forced Fruition, after the fact, they are able to cast, like let's say 3 spells before they're out of cards, then that's not good for me. Because after that first spell, I've just given them like 14 cards, 13 cards to choose from if they have a full hand. I don't know what you're doing in your life if that happened, but like it's just really sad for you unless you have the counters. Like, I mean, it's when they cast the spell, so the second they cast it, they draw all those cards. So if you can counter the stuff, like if you have 3 counters, then you're gravy. But like, I don't know, man, like giving them that many options, because then they have to discard, but they have a hand that is going to allow them to figure out a way to beat you. That's how I look at this card. Plus it costs too much for me. I'm sorry. 6 mana to maybe let my opponent win, just not good enough. This guy's big, but I mean, he's not big enough for that much mana. Sure, he's really, I mean, I obviously went a little bit more aggressive on this side of the scale, a little less milly with this one, but I don't know, like this guy's still really susceptible to board wipes and stuff like that. That late in the game, I don't have enough guys to answer too. Like that's the thing. Like the real reason this guy's out is that if they've played like Call of the Wild or whatever the fuck that shit is that gets all those wolves out, like just top decking this guy and laying him is not going to be a good enough blocker. Like I need something that could possibly clear the field if something really bad happens. And this guy is just not enough. He just doesn't do enough. He doesn't have any real abilities other than Shroud. Sure, he's like an 8/16, which is huge, but he doesn't have Trample. I mean, he doesn't have any can't be blocked abilities. Island Walk, even. Like, if he had Island Walk, I would consider it, you know, but he just doesn't. He just doesn't do enough late game to be good enough to make it into the pile. I mean, I already have dudes that promise to be +4/+4 at some point. I don't need a guy who might be a +4/+8. So anyway, you guys, that is my build of this deck. I know it's a little bit different than probably what you're used to seeing, but it is a lot of fun. It's really the only way I can have fun playing this pile is to run this version. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the 60. As always, leave your suggestions in the comments as to what you think the deck should look like, how you think this one will run, and some arguments as to cards that I left out, why you would put them in. But, you know, I really like this one. I think it runs well. It runs as well for me as this deck is ever going to run. It's like the most fun that I can have playing this deck for sure. So that's kind of why I built it this way. That's definitely why there's 2 Chancellors in there. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, you guys. Again, thank you to all the new people in here, and thank you to the old people as well that have been just hanging out from the get-go. It's always awesome to have everybody down there. And it's just fun doing this. So here's to a lot more deck techs to come. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, you guys. I will see you tomorrow.